The Crownfire Beacon went dark while Marwen Solace was still standing inside it. Rain struck the stormglass windows. Below Stormglass Cape, black water broke against reefs sharp enough to tear a dragon's wing. Above them, 6 royal dragons were returning through cloud. Sky Admiral Malkor Seren placed 3 failed sight test cards on the command table. Chief Keeper Solace misread one amber formation lamp as red during a clear weather test. He said, "2 recent routes were challenged after patrol captains reported unexpected corrections." "I raised one formation above warm fog, lifting from the western shelf," Marwen replied. "The other 2 remain disputed. The Crown cannot base royal navigation on sensations no second keeper can verify." Marwen turned toward Dragon King Vaedric Orrenfell. Her sight had narrowed over 5 years. Faces softened at the edges. Distant lamps became halos. Yet she could feel pressure change against the north cliff, smell heated salt before lightning, red fog lift from water temperature, and separate returning dragons by the intervals between their wingbeats. No royal dragon had been lost under her guidance in 30 years. Her quarterly reports listed narrowed color range, increased night halos, and every failed fixed light identification. In the margins, she recorded pressure reading, heat lift, and wingbeat correction. The crown form contained no field for adaptive navigation, and no examiner had ordered a live route trial. "I reported every measurable change," she said. "Then change the signal I cannot read. Do not erase the instruments I still can." Vaedric stood beside the central flame well. Marwen had guided him through his first coastal storm when he was 19, and too proud to admit he could not see the landing shelf. Now he studied the cards. "I have 3 route challenges, failed distance color tests, and no documented method another keeper can repeat. You have 3 disputed routes, and 1 instrument you chose not to test. Do not test only the part of me that is changing." Malkor opened the new lens chart. "The coast needs a system that survives its keeper. Experience deserves honor. It does not make undocumented adaptations safe enough for succession." The Crownfire supplied heat. The lens gave it direction. Pressure conduits inside the tower stone held the flame against cape winds. The keeper matched the brass wheel to the current's rhythm before the light entered the lens. Malkor's grid modeled tower wind, reefs, upper cloud approach, and standard patrol speed. "It passed daylight trials," he said. "The replacement keeper completed them. Not over warm water in a storm. The western shelf lifts fog and shortens the approach. The grid placed the patrol 8 minutes beyond the western danger arc. Malkor had scheduled the transfer before the dragons reached the cape." Marwen listened. 3 heavy strokes. A long pause. 2 rapid corrections. "Your grid is late. The lead dragon has entered the broken current." A captain moved toward the window. Malkor checked the route dial. "The calculated marker remains outside the danger arc." Keeper law required the outgoing chief to remain as route witness until the first dragon crossed the outer marker. Malkor treated the grid's calculated position as that marker and activated the transfer early. Vaedric touched the brass rail. "If I delay and your estimate is wrong, the patrol loses a trained successor in flight. If you proceed and the grid is wrong, you remove the only keeper reading the live current." His dragon heat reached her across the rail. Years ago, after lightning shattered the upper lantern, he had carried oil for 12 hours while she rebuilt the shutter ring. He had trusted her hands then. "You trusted this method for years," she said. "You simply believed I was doing it with younger eyes." Fear of an unrepeatable system now outweighed the woman who had kept it alive. "By Crown safety statute, I relieve you of command at Stormglass Cape. You will remain as route witness through the first landing." He lifted the bronze keeper chain from her shoulders. The metal caught in her grey hair. His fingers stopped before touching her skin. "Do not make erasure sound like mercy. I am not trying to erase you." "Then ask the question you avoided." "What question?" "How am I still bringing them home?" The replacement keeper, entered the flame ring. He was young, licensed, and frightened, but he checked the chart twice, set the approved eastern angle, opened the lower vents to the marked position, and engaged the ignition stone correctly. The eastern lens caught the flame and threw a pale corridor across the fog. For one breath, it appeared to work. Then the lead dragon corrected toward the light while the second broke north. Their wingbeats crossed. "The west current is gone," Marwen said. The flame shuddered against the eastern conduit. Heat pulled from the stable channel, crawled backward along the lens frame, and collapsed into the basin. Malcor checked the gauge. Fuel is full. The replacement keeper struck the ignition stone again. Sparks answered. The flame channel would not draw. Vaedric moved to the window. Through rain and fog, the oldest royal dragon veered toward the eastern rocks. Marwen crossed to the outer wall above the western pressure channel. For 30 years, she used that stone to feel whether the beacon's draw reached the sea conduit. She placed her palm against it. Deep inside the dead beacon, something knocked once in answer. The knock inside the western conduit proved that pressure remained trapped in the Crownfire Beacon. It did not prove that Marwen Solace alone could release it, that the new lens grid was useless, or that Vaedric's removal order had caused the failure. The oldest dragon dropped beneath the eastern false line. "Sound the western horn," Marwen said. Sky Admiral Malcor Seren turned from the fuel gauge. "The eastern route is the approved corridor. The lead dragon is correcting against it. Give him a sound line before he reaches the reef shadow." Dragon King Vaedric Orrenfell faced the replacement keeper. "Can you hold the basin while she reads the return?" "Yes, Majesty." Keeper law allowed emergency dual command when a route system failed during approach. The licensed keeper retained control of flame and lens. The outgoing chief could direct temporary corrections as route witness until the danger passed. Vaedric suspended the transfer order without restoring Marwen's office. "Dual procedure," he said. "Malcor records every change. Marwen calls only what she can identify. The replacement keeper controls the mechanism." Marwen did not thank him, then moved the dragons first. The western horn gave 3 low notes. The lead dragon leveled. A second horn from the lower cliff marked open water. The replacement keeper closed the eastern shutter to half width, preventing the false corridor from pulling the formation toward the rocks. "Wingbeats?" he asked. "First dragon. 4. Pause. 2. Second is breaking north. Third is too high to follow either." Malcor watched the route dial. The grid still places them beyond the inner marker. "The grid estimates distance from standard formation speed," Marwen said. They compressed their approach beneath the storm ceiling. "Listen to the interval, not the chart." Vaedric ordered the cliff captains to record the wingbeat count independently. The oldest dragon answered the western horn and turned over dark water instead of stone. The others followed unevenly, buying minutes rather than safety. Malcor opened the conduit panel. Fuel and ignition are present. Pressure is not drawing through the eastern channel. Marwen placed 2 fingers against the western wall. The pressure is returning in pulses. The flame is trapped behind the shutter junction. Can the replacement keeper release it? If he has the rhythm. The young keeper stepped beside her. "Tell me what to feel." She guided his hand to a separate brass plate. "Do not wait for a steady vibration. The current is breaking. Count the first dragon's downstrokes. Turn on the pause after the 4th. He listened. The tower trembled through the plate. "Now," Marwen said. He moved the brass wheel 1 mark west. The conduit answered with a dull thud, but did not open. Malcor marked the setting. "That correction is outside the new grid." "Because the grid uses tower wind," Marwen replied. "The warm shelf pushes fog upward beneath the dragons. It shortens the western approach and changes where pressure reaches the stone. Can that be measured? Send a heat line to the lower watch." Vaedric ordered the cliff station to lower copper temperature strips above the shelf. The readings returned warmer than the grid model by 6 degrees. Pressure ribbons along the west parapet showed a lower current bending toward the cape. Malkor studied both records. The engineers calibrated from upper wind and fixed reef lines. They did not include water heat. They were never given my storm margins, Marwen said. Were they filed? My quarterly reports named heat lift and pressure correction. Vaedric called for the reports. The Crown Examiner's copies listed Marwen's narrowed color range, night halos, and failed light identification. Her margin notes remained, but the review summaries reduced them to keeper compensation habits. No live trial had been ordered. Malkor's voice stayed level. A margin note is not a transferable method. No, Marwen said, but it was enough to require a test before replacing me during storm season. Vaedric read the examiner's recommendation. Visual capacity declining. Standard succession advised. No adaptive performance review required. He looked at Marwen. I accepted a report that measured what you had lost and ignored what you had built around it. That does not make my method complete. No, it makes the investigation incomplete. The third dragon began descending too fast. Marwen counted the returning strokes. The replacement keeper matched her count at the wheel. On the fourth beat, he released the western pressure latch. Heat surged through the tower. The Crownfire rose from the basin, entered the western conduit, and caught the half-closed lens. A narrow light crossed the fog above open water. Hold that angle, Marwen said. Do not widen until the second dragon aligns. One by one, the 6 royal dragons found the corrected corridor. The oldest landed hard beyond the cliff wall, but no wing struck the reefs. Only after the final dragon crossed the outer marker did Vaedric close the emergency procedure. Marwen remained suspended. The replacement keeper remained licensed. Malkor ordered comparative storm testing before any permanent command decision. The route recorder brought forward the previous month's correction log. The same western pressure adjustment appeared 3 times. Each entry matched Marwen's timing against returning wingbeats. Each had been classified among the navigation errors used to remove her. The 3 disputed corrections did not prove that Marwen Solace's judgment had failed. They proved that the official review had classified the same pressure adjustment as error without testing why she made it. The route room remained sealed until morning. Dragon King Vaedric Orrenfell ordered the correction logs, keeper reports, examiner summaries, and training records opened under joint review. Marwen attended as a suspended route witness. The young replacement keeper remained beside the brass wheel, neither accused nor dismissed. Sky Admiral Malkor Seren placed the 3 correction sheets in order. All 3 departures from the approved grid were entered after descent began, he said. That is why they were challenged. All 3 formations landed. Marwen replied. A safe outcome does not automatically validate an undocumented method. No. But a repeated correction that prevents the same danger deserves more than the word error. The first sheet recorded a warm shelf beneath eastern fog. The second showed a low western pressure turn after heavy rain. The third matched the storm they had just survived. Each correction moved the route west by 1 brass mark. Each had been signed by Marwen. Each had later been summarized as visual misalignment. Vaedric opened her quarterly reports. In the margins, Marwen had written heat changes, horn intervals, wingbeat spacing, and pressure responses in raised dots and scored lines. What is this? He asked. Attaque-t-il route record? Malkor studied the marks. It is not in the approved keeper code. I submitted a translation key 5 years ago. The archive clerk found 11 petitions attached to successive reports. Marwen had requested comparative storm trials, modified color signals, pressure plates for successor training, and thermal readings on the official route form. 9 were returned as outside examination scope. 2 were marked for later review. None had been tested. Vaedric looked toward Malkor. Why did these never reach the Flight Council? The centralized grid project was already under development, Malkor said. Local systems were being reduced so every coastal tower could use the same command language. Reduced is a polite word for removing what the standard could not measure. The coast cannot depend on private knowledge. I agreed. That is why I tried to document it. The replacement keeper leaned closer. Can these be learned? Yes. How long? To recognize basic pressure changes, weeks. To guide a storm approach alone, years. Malcor's voice stayed controlled. Then my concern remains. A method requiring years of personal instruction is a succession risk. So is a system that sends dragons toward rocks because it was quicker to approve. The review moved to staffing records. 5 years earlier, Stormglass Cape had employed 3 senior keepers and 4 assistants. Centralization reduced the post to 1 chief, 1 junior keeper, and rotating military watchmen. During those 5 years, Marwen had covered 73 additional storm shifts. Vaedric read the number twice. Why were these not assigned to relief keepers? There were none trained on the old pressure system. You could have refused, and leave incoming dragons to a grid that had not been storm-tested. You carried this alone. I carried the part no one budgeted for. The pay ledger showed that Marwen declined supplemental storm compensation 3 times. The money funded lower cliff horns, civilian rescue lamps, and copper temperature strips. Malcor examined the authorizations. These expenditures were lawful. They were also necessary. The Crown called them optional because no military form required them. Vaedric remembered the first storm she had guided him through at 19. He had heard her count beneath the thunder and assumed she was counting seconds. You were counting my wingbeats. I was counting when you stopped trusting the light. He looked at her. Why did you never tell me what the count meant? You were a frightened young prince trying not to die. Later, you became a king who placed coastal routes under military command. I should not have needed private access to you to make public safety legible. He accepted the rebuke without defense. The examiner's archive held 1 more packet. It contained Marwen's proposed live performance test. The cover note recommended postponement until the new grid was complete. Across the bottom, a royal administrative mark approved the delay. Vaedric recognized his seal. I signed this. You signed hundreds of transition papers, Malcor said. The recommendation came through proper channels, and I never asked what was being postponed. Marwen closed the packet. You did not remove me because my method failed. You removed me before allowing it to be examined. The route recorder produced the safe arrival certificates for the 3 disputed flights. Each used the standard Crown code. Each stated that the formation had landed under approved navigation procedure. Malcor looked at Marwen. You corrected outside the approved grid, then certified the arrivals under the standard code. The form had no field for adaptive correction. Then you signed a record that did not describe what happened. No one moved toward the papers. Marwen did not deny the signatures. All 3 disputed routes carried her name beneath the words. Procedure followed. The disputed arrival certificates moved the inquiry from Marwen Solace's eyesight to her records. By noon, Stormglass Cape's Flight Council had assembled inside the lower beacon chamber. Dragon captains stood along the curved wall. Crown engineers occupied the chart table. The young replacement keeper remained beside the brass wheel as an operational witness. Sky Admiral Malcor Seren placed the 3 certificates beneath the council lamp. Chief Keeper Solace made unapproved route corrections and then certified that standard procedure had been followed. The issue is no longer whether the dragons landed. It is whether the Crown can trust the record of how. Marwen stood without her keeper chain. The standard form had no field for pressure correction. It had a field for deviation. For deviations, the grid recognized. Malcor did not raise his voice. A record cannot become accurate merely because the approved form was inconvenient. Dragon King Vaedric Orrenfell looked at the signatures. Did you knowingly certify an incomplete account? Yes. Silence tightened around the chamber. Marwen continued before anyone could turn the admission into surrender. If I withheld the certificate, the pilot's medical clearance, dragon feed release, and storm damage claims remained frozen. I attached correction notes to the route logs and signed the only form that allowed the landed crews to leave administrative hold. You chose an inaccurate certificate, Vaedric said. I chose not to punish living crews because your form could not describe what kept them alive. Malkor turned to the council. That answer may explain motive. It does not make the reporting practice safe. No, Marwen said. It proves the reporting system was already unsafe. The council ordered a live competency demonstration before deciding whether her certificates constituted professional misconduct. Malkor proposed a controlled daylight pass using the new grid. Daylight removes the very condition under dispute, Marwen said. It also prevents us from creating another emergency. Then use the outer western circuit. Keep the test dragon beyond the inner reef line. Station 2 horn crews below, and place the replacement keeper at the wheel. I will call corrections only. He will decide whether the measurements support them. Vaedric studied the storm bank still moving beyond the cape. If the approach becomes unstable, the test ends. That should have been the rule before my removal. He accepted the words without answering them. An experienced royal dragon took the outer circuit with a flight captain aboard. Pressure ribbons were fixed along the tower. Copper heat strips hung above the western shelf. The engineers recorded upper wind, sea temperature, reef distance, and formation speed. On the first pass, the dragon stayed high. The new grid predicted the approach correctly. Malkor faced Marwen. The system is not useless. I never said it was. A signal officer raised an amber flag. Marwen identified it as red. The mistake was entered publicly. She did not look away. The fixed visual code still requires modification if I serve in command. Malkor nodded once. That is a material limitation. Yes, a limitation is not the same as the absence of expertise. For the second pass, the dragon descended beneath the storm shelf. Warm water lifted fog from the western rocks. The pressure ribbons along the lower parapet turned inward. The grid still placed the dragon 4 minutes beyond the outer marker. Marwen listened. 3 strokes. Short pause. 2. He has entered the compressed current. The route clock disagrees, Malkor said. The route clock assumes standard airspeed. The replacement keeper pressed his palm to the brass plate. I feel the west conduit returning early. Malkor ordered the horn crews to report independently. The lower station confirmed wing noise above the outer shelf. The dragon was nearly 2 minutes closer than the grid predicted. Call the correction, Vaedric said. 1 mark west. Hold the shutter narrow. Open on the 4th downstroke. The replacement keeper followed the sequence. The visible corridor shifted away from the eastern rocks and steadied above open water. The test dragon aligned without crossing the danger line. No one applauded. Malkor examined the measurements. The method identified a variable the grid omitted. It still depends on training that has not been standardized. Then standardize it, Marwen replied. Do not call knowledge private after refusing every request to teach it. Vaedric stepped closer, stopping before proximity could resemble comfort. You should not have signed a form that hid the correction. No, and I should not have accepted a system that gave you no truthful way to record it. That admission belongs in the council minutes, not between us. He ordered it entered. The engineers compared the live setting with the disputed route logs. All 3 corrections matched the successful second pass. Then the replacement keeper opened the earlier design folio. The first engineering draft included a western warm shelf setting 1 mark beyond the approved grid. The final crown calibration plate did not. The setting had been removed before the new lens system reached Stormglass Cape. The missing western setting changed the inquiry from keeper performance to system design. It did not prove sabotage. It proved only that the first engineering draft recognized the warm shelf and that the approved crown calibration did not. Vaedric Orrenfell ordered both versions sealed under joint custody. Sky Admiral Malkor Seren examined the revision marks. The final plate standardized every crown beacon to the same coastal grid, he said. Local variables were removed so military formations would not face different commands at every cape. Marwen Solace stood beside the test records. You removed the variable that shortened this coast. We removed settings that had not passed transferable testing. They were never tested because my live trial was postponed. That delay carried the king's seal. Vaedric did not look away. Yes, mine. The design folio showed 4 revision stages. The warm shelf setting survived the first 2. In the third, it was reduced to an advisory note. In the final plate, it disappeared. The approval line bore the office code of Centralized Coastal Command. Malcor's office, not his personal signature. The code establishes authority, the recorder said. It does not identify who made the deletion or why. Then, identify the revision clerk, engineer, and officer who released the plate, Vaedric said. Malcor folded his hands behind him. While that review proceeds, the coast still requires flight coverage. No royal formation uses the new grid over Stormglass Cape. Several captains turned toward the king. Malcor's expression hardened without losing control. Grounding the Western Patrol leaves 2 border towers without aerial relief. Then they receive land support and inland dragons until this route is tested. Inland dragons are slower and untrained for salt winds. So were the crews we nearly sent into the Eastern Rocks. Vaedric ordered every military coastal flight suspended between Stormglass Cape and the Northern Shoals. Civilian rescue flights could continue under dual command procedure, with the licensed replacement keeper at the mechanism and Marwen serving only as route witness if she agreed. Marwen's mouth tightened. You are asking me to carry responsibility without returning authority. I am asking whether you will help keep civilians alive while the command structure is reviewed. That is different. Will you? For rescue routes, not military exercises. And every correction enters the record in full. Agreed. Malcor objected. You are creating a temporary system around one woman's senses. No, Marwen said. Around measurements the Crown refused to include. The lower watch began comparative trials. Copper heat strips, pressure ribbons, horn stations, and wingbeat intervals were added to the route sheet. The replacement keeper learned to identify the western return pulse without Marwen touching the wheel. By the third trial, he called the first correction himself. 1 mark west, he said. Warm shelf active. Marwen listened, then nodded. Correct. The moment mattered more than praise. Her method had begun to survive her. Vaedric watched from the chart table. You wanted this taught. For 5 years, I made inheritance of knowledge sound less urgent than uniformity. You made what could be filed more valuable than what could keep people alive. He accepted the words. Then he opened the Royal Flight Archive. The restricted records showed that his centralized route decree had removed civilian keepers from final calibration review. Before the decree, every coastal lens change required signatures from 1 Crown engineer, 1 military navigator, and the local chief keeper. Afterward, military command could approve the plate alone. Vaedric placed the decree beside the missing western setting. Enter this into the inquiry. Malcor looked at him. That order ended years of conflicting local routes. It also removed the person most likely to know when the model was wrong. You are treating 1 failed transition as proof against the entire system. I am treating 6 dragons above rocks as enough reason to stop pretending the system is complete. The cost came before sunset. The Western Dragon Lords refused to release inland mounts without compensation. 2 border towers sent warning fires. The court demanded Vaedric restore military flights before nightfall. He refused. Palace reserves were opened for ground escorts, signal crews, and emergency grain at the exposed towers. Vaedric cancelled the midsummer aerial review and diverted its dragon teams to inland relief. Marwen found him alone beside the dark eastern lens. You are paying for the delay now. With soldiers, gold, and political support I should have risked before I risked the coast. That is responsibility. It is not restoration. I know. The replacement keeper brought the final lens plate from the tower housing. Under ordinary light, The eastern root grooves appeared clean. Under furnace heat, a second set of lines emerged beneath them. The hidden grooves matched the deleted western setting. The Crown engineer traced the cuts with a measuring needle. These were not part of the original casting. The plate was recut after manufacture, then reheated to conceal the older channel. "Can you date the alteration?" Vaedric asked. "Only to the period before installation." The finding named no hand and no motive, but someone had not merely omitted Marwen's route. Someone had physically scored over it. The recut lens plate entered the furnace laboratory under 3 seals. Its hidden western grooves matched Marwen Solace's storm corrections. The newer eastern cuts appeared in no engineering revision. Dragon King Vaedric Orrenfell ordered the plate's custody chain opened. Sky Admiral Malcor Seren stood across the chart table. "A recut plate proves unauthorized work," Malcor said. "It does not prove the route was designed to cause a wreck." "No," Marwen replied. "The flight records must show what the altered route did." The foundry ledger recorded the plate, leaving manufacture with the western warm shelf setting intact. 2 days later, Centralized Coastal Command recalled it for final military harmonization. The recall bore Malcor's office seal, not his personal hand. A calibration clerk received it. A military engraver returned it 6 hours later. The engraver's name was missing, but the tool register showed 1 storm glass cutting needle issued during that interval. "Who authorized the needle?" Vaedric asked. "The calibration master," Malcor said. "That office handled hundreds of adjustments. The master had died the previous winter." His deputy produced the sealed work slips. One ordered removal of the western correction because it encouraged premature coastal descent. Another added an eastern corridor aligned with reef markers and standard patrol speed. The authorization code belonged to Malcor's Strategic Route Division. "That establishes division authority," the recorder said. "Not your knowledge or intent." "Then continue," Malcor replied. They opened 5 years of coastal incident maps. 4 royal dragons had damaged wings or tail membranes near routes, later classified as pilot error. 3 belonged to houses that opposed Malcor's expansion of centralized command. Each crash occurred where an eastern crown line crossed a warm water fog shelf. "These are not random reefs," Marwen said. "The false corridor shortens the approach whenever the lower current turns inland." "Those flights entered unstable storms," Malcor answered. "Yes. That is when the missing variable matters." The replacement keeper compared the settings. All 4 incidents used the same eastern angle that had nearly drawn the 6 returning dragons into the rocks. Vaedric's face hardened. "Who recovered the damaged dragons?" "Crown salvage contractors." The registry named 3 companies. 2 were ordinary coastal yards. The third, Seren Maritime Recovery, was held through Malcor's widowed sister. Malcor spoke before accusation could replace evidence. "My family firm held lawful contracts. Loose scales may be recovered when a dragon healer certifies they cannot be reattached." The healer register carried 2 military signatures. One healer denied approving 3 recoveries. The other had been deployed inland on the dates attributed to him. The scales were sold to armor houses at 4 times the Crown contract rate. "Those sales funded patrol equipment," Malcor said. "And paid dividends to your family firm," Marwen replied. "I did not order dragons wrecked for scales." "No document says that yet." Her restraint made the evidence harder to dismiss. The recorder opened strategic route memoranda. One compared political reliability among dragon houses. Beside 3 rival lords appeared a recommendation: reduce independent flight capacity through maintenance attrition. The phrase carried Malcor's initials. "What did that mean?" Vaedric asked. "Grounding unsafe dragons, restricting unverified keepers, and consolidating repairs under Crown contracts. Not forcing crashes?" "No." The next attachment listed projected salvage yield from anticipated coastal losses. Marwen's hand tightened. "You calculated scale recovery before the losses," We calculated every likely cost of storm season. You listed only houses opposing your command. Malcor's composure thinned but did not break. Centralization required pressure. I intended to reduce independent fleets, not kill dragons. The recorder placed the recut order beside the projected losses. Its final approval bore Malcor's personal route cipher. That cipher authorized the eastern angle and removed the local keeper's countersignature. Vaedric looked toward Marwen. I gave his office the power to erase your review. Yes. I believed one command language would make the coast safer. You made dissent easier to remove than danger. Vaedric suspended Malcor from coastal command. His records, contracts, and correspondence entered civil and military review. Malcor surrendered his flight seal. You will weaken the fleet to punish a system that kept the border intact. I am grounding a system that treated damaged dragons as usable pressure. Every Seren recovery payment was frozen. Independent healers would review the crashes. Rival houses would receive Crown-funded care and replacement transport before judgment on personal guilt. Marwen watched. The orders entered. That repairs the immediate danger. It does not repair what I did to you. No, he asked for nothing more. As the furnace cooled, the hidden western grooves glowed beneath the eastern scoring. The recorder aligned the plate with the incident map. Every altered corridor ended at a wreck site controlled by Seren Maritime Recovery. Then the lower watch sounded the civilian distress horn. A fishing rescue flight was trapped beyond the southern fog bank. Marwen removed her witness gloves. Open the civilian route. Vaedric said, You are still suspended. I know. And if you leave this chamber, I stop helping you decide whether my expertise deserves a title. She turned toward the rescue stair. People are waiting for a light. The southern distress horn sounded again before Marwen Solace reached the lower gallery. A civilian rescue dragon circled beyond the fog bank, with 2 fishing skiffs beneath its harness. Its rider had lost the crown corridor when the main lens went dark. Sky Admiral Malcor Seren remained under guard in the furnace chamber. Dragon King Vaedric Orrenfell followed Marwen down the stair. You are still suspended from Crown Command, he said. The lower rescue line is not Crown Command. Coastal law allowed any registered keeper to direct civilian horns and harbor braziers when the royal beacon failed. Marwen's suspension removed her authority over Crownfire. It did not erase 30 years of civilian rescue certification. The lower station had 3 horn crews, 6 salt braziers, and no lens strong enough to cut the storm. Open the south braziers in pairs, Marwen ordered. Leave the cliff fire dark. The cliff fire is the brightest mark, the watch captain said. It reflects off the fog and makes the reef appear farther west. Give the rider 2 low points he can measure. Vaedric looked toward the dragon. Can the horns carry through this wind? Stagger them against the gusts. The civilian crews waited for her hand, then sounded one horn from the harbor wall and another from the southern shelf. The rescue dragon corrected between the notes. The replacement keeper arrived with the route slate. I can hold a narrow Crownfire line if the council authorizes it. No. The false eastern channel remains in the lens. We bring them home without it. The dragon descended by sound and low fire. One skiff struck hard water, but the harness held. Harbor crews caught both lines before the current pulled them toward the rocks. Only after the rider dismounted did Vaedric speak. I can issue an emergency restoration until the inquiry ends. You would restore me because the coast needs an answer tonight. Yes, and tomorrow, when the sky is clear, I return to being an undocumented risk. I would order the method reviewed. You ordered review after removing me. I will not lend my name to a temporary exception that leaves the same authority intact. Malcor was brought down under escort to witness the civilian report. He studied the horn timings. This rescue depended on one keeper again. That remains a structural weakness. The watch captain called the second interval. The replacement keeper recorded it. 3 people can repeat tonight's route. That is not yet a coastal standard. No. It is what standardization should have begun with. Vaedric held out no chain. What are you choosing? To leave Crown service. The words struck more quietly than the storm. You could remain through the inquiry. So I can defend work your system used for 30 years without learning it? So the final design does not exclude you again. Then invite my evidence. Do not require my employment. She signed the separation record as Marwen Solace, civilian keeper. The tactile route books, pressure keys, and training petitions were her own copies. Crown logs stayed under seal. She carried only what she had written outside paid duty and the brass counter she used to teach wingbeat intervals. Where will you go? Vaedric asked. The civilian station below the South Harbour. It has no Crownfire lens. It has people the royal grid ranked after military flights. His expression tightened. I did not write that priority. You approved the command system that enforced it. By evening, representatives from 7 coastal harbours climbed Stormglass Cape. Their declaration kept civilian rescue routes open but withdrew local pilots, fog readers, horns, and landing crews from royal formations until coastal communities received voting authority over route changes. Read it. If every harbour claims veto power, military response will fracture. A harbour representative answered, We are not claiming command over your dragons. We are refusing to guide them while your officers remove local knowledge from the route. Vaedric could compel the crews under wartime law. Marwen waited. No forced service, he said. Royal formations remain inland until terms are negotiated. That leaves the western towers exposed, Malcor said. Yes, you are allowing civilian pressure to set defense policy. I am allowing the people who keep the coast visible to stop pretending their labor has no authority. The cost arrived before nightfall. 3 patrols were diverted inland. Supply dragons could not use the Cape. Border commanders demanded compulsory harbor service. Vaedric refused it. Marwen descended to the south station without a royal escort. At the lower gate, he caught up, but did not block her. I trusted the instrument that could be filed over the woman whose method I never required anyone to learn. That truth belongs in your reform, not in my departure. I know. She kept walking. Along the coast, civilian towers lit white rescue lamps for fishing boats, healers, and storm refugees. One by one, they left the crimson royal corridors dark. By midnight, every harbour could still guide a civilian home. Not one would guide a royal dragon. The royal coast remained dark for military flight, but not for civilians. For 3 days, harbour braziers guided fishing boats, healer skiffs, and storm refugees while royal dragons took the inland route. 2 border towers lost half their supply schedule. The Western Lords demanded compulsory service from harbour crews. Vaedric Orrenfell refused. Instead, he summoned the Coastal Council to Stormglass Cape and placed his centralized route decree on the public table. Marwen Solace attended as an independent civilian keeper. She wore no bronze chain. Sky Admiral Malcor stood under restricted guard, permitted to challenge records but barred from operational command. You are allowing a labor withdrawal to rewrite military policy, Malcor said. I am allowing the coast to show what military policy concealed, Vaedric replied. He ordered the first repair entered. Every civilian rescue station would receive restored Crown funding for horns, pressure plates, heat strips, apprentices, and storm shelters. The money would come from the cancelled aerial review, palace ceremonies, and frozen recovery contracts. A Treasury official objected. Those contracts have not been adjudicated. Then use palace reserves first, Vaedric said. If the contractors are cleared, the Crown bears the cost. Marwen looked across the table. You are placing uncertainty on the Treasury instead of the coast. It should have been there from the beginning. That repairs the budget. It does not restore authority. No. The second order returned local counter-signature to every beacon change. No military lens plate could be installed without review by a Crown engineer, flight navigator, and chief keeper of the affected coast. Malcor remained control. One local keeper could delay an urgent defense adjustment. Then the objection is recorded, and emergency use expires after one flight, Marwen said. Urgency cannot become permanent design. Vaedric entered the limitation. The third repair concerned the damaged dragons. Independent healers had reviewed 4 coastal incidents. 3 injuries matched the false eastern corridor. The 4th remained uncertain. Crown funds would cover treatment, replacement transport, and lost flight service without requiring the houses to waive later claims. "You are compensating rivals before proving intent," Malkor said. "I am repairing verified harm before deciding whose motive caused it. That weakens the Crown's position in judgment. It weakens only our ability to use delay as leverage." Marwen did not praise him. The inquiry opened Vaedric's decree. He read the clause removing civilian keepers from final calibration review. "I signed this because one command language promised speed," he said before the harbor representatives. "I did not require comparative storm testing. I did not ask what knowledge the standard excluded. I removed Marwen before understanding the method that kept this cape safe." A counselor turned toward her. "Will you resume command now?" "No." The answer came without anger. "I will not return as proof that the system has become kind. It must become transferable, inspectable, and safe without depending on whether a king trusts one woman." Vaedric accepted it publicly. "What will you offer?" "An independent training program owned jointly by the harbor stations. My tactile route code, pressure timing, and thermal margins may be taught, tested, and revised by civilian and crown keepers together." "Under whose authority?" Malkor asked. "The coastal councils. The crown funds it and holds no final command." "One vote," Marwen said. Malkor looked at Vaedric. "You will trade military unity for local bargaining. I will trade unchecked command for evidence." The council approved a temporary 7-seat structure. 2 harbor keepers, 1 rescue captain, 1 dragon pilot, 1 crown engineer, 1 military navigator, and 1 coastal healer. No member held veto power. Marwen agreed to teach for 6 weeks under written contract, not as restored chief, not under Vaedric's protection. As an independent keeper paid the same rate as a royal flight master. Afterward, Vaedric found her on the lower gallery, where pressure ribbons snapped in the wind. "I once thought keeping you near the crown would prove I had repaired what I broke. It would prove only that I was useful again. I know that now. Knowing late still costs other people. I am trying to pay that cost before asking anything of you." She turned her clouded gaze toward him. "Then do not ask." He did not. At sunset, the first joint class gathered around the brass wheel. The young replacement keeper called the warm shelf correction, without Marwen beside him. The western conduit answered cleanly. For the first time, her method crossed into another keeper without being reduced to instinct. Then, every pressure plate in the tower struck at once. A storm front had risen beyond the southern horizon, faster than predicted. The harbor bells sounded civilian distress. A moment later, the royal flight horn answered from the same fog bank. Marwen listened to the overlapping wingbeats. "There are too many." The replacement keeper checked the slate. 3 civilian rescue dragons. 5 royal transports. Vaedric looked toward the dark crown corridor. Under the coast's new law, Marwen held no command over the royal flight. She reached for the civilian horn first. The first civilian horn sounded before the royal formation reached the southern marker. "Marwen Solace to civilian corridor first," she said. A military navigator turned from the route board. 5 royal transports are carrying grain to the western towers, and 3 rescue dragons are carrying fishing crews who cannot hold above the fog. Royal supply has priority under storm statute, not under the coast's emergency charter. Civilian life comes first when one corridor cannot safely serve both. The 7-seat Coastal Council had not yet completed its first week. Its authority had never faced a simultaneous royal approach. Dragon King Vaedric Orrenfell stood beside the inactive crimson route lever. What do you require? Order the royal transports to hold beyond the northern shelf. No descent until the civilian line clears. They have enough lift for one delay, the military navigator said. Not two. Then we do not waste the first. Vaedric gave the holding order. He did not call it permission. The replacement keeper opened the western pressure conduit. Marwen remained at the lower horn station, where civilian rescue law gave her command independent of crown rank. The Crownfire rose into a narrow white corridor. First rescue dragon is low, the keeper said. Marwen listened through the stone. 2 heavy strokes, then drag. Its harness is pulling unevenly. Shift the south horn, 1 interval east. The harbor crew obeyed. The first dragon corrected toward open water. A fishing skiff appeared beneath it, half full of seawater. The military navigator checked the royal slate. The transports are losing formation. They are stronger and higher, Marwen said. Keep them outside. A royal captain's horn sounded through the fog 3 sharp demands for immediate landing. Vaedric's jaw tightened. They are invoking crown priority. Marwen kept her hand on the pressure plate. Then answer with the holding code. They may refuse. Then they choose disobedience. Do not make civilians pay for it. Vaedric sounded the royal hold himself. The second rescue dragon entered the corridor with 2 injured sailors strapped behind its rider. The third followed too close, pushed by the same warm water current the old grid had ignored. Close the lens by 1 mark, Marwen said. The replacement keeper hesitated. That narrows the line below training width. It separates the third dragon from the second. Feel the return pulse. He pressed his palm to the brass plate. 1 mark, he agreed. The corridor tightened. The third dragon broke south rather than crossing the second's wings. All 3 civilian flights cleared the cape. Only then did Marwen turn toward the crimson lever. The royal transports may descend under joint command. The military navigator looked at Vaedric. Vaedric said, "Follow the council procedure." Marwen, the replacement keeper, and the navigator set the route together. No single-hand controlled flame, lens, and approach order. The 5 transports landed before the storm closed the outer shelf. When the final harness touched stone, a court officer approached Marwen with the old bronze keeper chain. "His Majesty can restore your command for tonight." Marwen did not take it. "I did not guide them because a title returned. I guided them because the coast had authority to choose whom the light served first." Vaedric dismissed the officer. The chain remained sealed. Good. The storm exposed another problem. The new council could operate the beacon, but it still depended on route records held in the Crown Archive above the lens chamber. Marwen faced the harbor representatives. No future keeper should have to trust that the route in front of them is the route originally approved. Malcor Seren, still under guard, understood before the others. The Ember Archive contains military corridors. It contains the history of changes made to a public coast. Opening it to civilian navigators exposes defense routes. Then separate active defense positions from alteration records. Secrecy cannot cover the cuts that almost killed dragons. Vaedric held the archive seal. Under the old decree, only the Dragon King and Sky Admiral could open it. He placed the seal on the council table. "I surrender sole access." Malcor's voice remained steady. "You are dismantling command during a border crisis. I am dismantling the part that allowed command to alter a coast without witnesses." The council established 3 key custody: 1 harbor keeper, 1 crown engineer, and 1 elected dragon pilot. Marwen held none of the keys. That mattered to her. She did not want private possession. She wanted public access that survived her. The archive opened before witnesses. Inside lay heat-blackened lens plates, pressure maps, route amendments, and Ember record cylinders preserving every major calibration made at Stormglass Cape. The replacement keeper lifted the oldest cylinder. "How do we read it?" Marwen pointed toward the Crownfire Basin. "Not through my hands. Through the public projection ring." The cylinder entered the ring. Crownfire climbed the glass and cast a pale route across the chamber wall. Then a second line appeared beneath it. The hidden line bent east toward the first wreck reef. A third followed, then a fourth. Each false corridor ended where Seren Maritime Recovery had later claimed damaged dragon scales. The false corridors burned across the chamber wall in sequence. They did not identify who cut them into the lens plates or why. But each line ended at a reef where a royal dragon had been injured, and each wreck matched a later claim filed by Seren Maritime Recovery. Marwen Solace stood beneath the projection, without a keeper chain. Sky Admiral Malkor Seren watched the roots cross the stone. "You are treating correlation as intent," he said. "Storm losses always produce salvage." The Crown engineer placed the recut plates beside the projection record. "Not when the altered line precedes the wreck, and the recovery company receives advance notice of likely scale yield. The harbor keeper added the salvage contracts. The elected dragon pilot entered the incident logs. The 3 custody holders signed every comparison before another record was opened. Dragon King Vaedric Orrenfell did not direct the evidence. The Ember Archive showed 4 route amendments made under centralized coastal command. The first 3 carried division authority. The 4th bore Malkor's personal route cipher. Beside it lay the memorandum recommending maintenance attrition for dragon houses opposing him. "I meant grounding unsafe rivals through inspection and repair control," Malkor said. Marwen looked toward the line ending at the first wreck reef. "Then why did the route move toward the reef before inspection began?" "I approved a harsher eastern approach because independent pilots ignored standard descent, and the hidden western setting removed as unverified local practice. The practice your incident records proved necessary." Malkor turned to Vaedric. "You wanted one coast, one command language, and no lord strong enough to defy the crown. I built the system you asked for." Vaedric placed his centralized route decree on the table. "Yes. I gave military command power to remove local review. I accepted uniformity as safety and treated disagreement as delay. Your choices were yours. The authority that concealed them began with mine." The final archive cylinder preserved the 4th plate's reheating window. Attached to it was a routing instruction directing Seren Maritime Recovery to station equipment below the eastern reef before the patrol arrived. It carried Malkor's personal cipher and private seal. No confession was needed. The public finding remained narrow. Malkor had authorized concealed route alterations, removed required local countersignature, and arranged salvage presence before the incidents. Whether he intended death rather than damage would be decided by military and civil judgment. Vaedric permanently removed him from coastal authority. Every salvage contract was frozen. Injured dragon houses received restitution from Crown reserves before final damages. Harbor communities received compensation for lost rescue labor, damaged boats, and unpaid route support. Malkor surrendered his command seal. "You will make the coast slower," he told Marwen. "Slower than a false light is not failure. And when border dragons arrive before 7 people finish debating, the emergency rule permits 1 flight action," she said. "Then review begins before urgency becomes permanent power." The Coastal Council reconvened beneath the projected routes. Vaedric read the permanent charter aloud. Stormglass Cape would no longer belong solely to Crown Command. Civilian keepers, rescue crews, dragon pilots, engineers, navigators, and healers would share authority. No route change could survive beyond 1 emergency flight without review. Adaptive methods had to be tested, documented, and taught rather than dismissed because they began in one body. Marwen's tactile route code became part of the training standard. It did not replace visual signals. It stood beside them. Amber lamps received pulse patterns for keepers who could not distinguish their color. Pressure plates were installed along the coast. Thermal margins entered the official route form. Marwen's sight remained narrowed. The coast changed around that fact instead of demanding that she deny it. Vaedric faced the gathered crews. I removed Marwen before asking how she continued to bring dragons home. I trusted a system I could file over expertise I never required anyone to understand. Malcor altered the route. I made such alteration possible. He surrendered the Crown's veto seat on the council. The royal representative would hold one vote. The old bronze keeper chain was brought forward. Marwen did not take it. I will not return as sole chief keeper. No coast should depend on one woman being too loyal to leave. The council appointed her founding director of civilian navigation training under the same charter as everyone else. She accepted for 1 year. Her primary station remained at the South Harbour. After the hall emptied, Vaedric found her beside the western pressure wall. Crownfire moved cleanly through the restored conduit. "I have no office left to offer that would not insult what you built," he said. "Good. And no apology large enough to shorten the years you carried alone." "No." He stopped an arm's length away. "May I still learn the route?" Marwen rested her palm against the stone. The pressure pulse returned, steady and ordinary. "Tomorrow, the South Station needs new oil lines. I remember how to carry oil. You remember how to follow instructions?" A faint warmth entered his voice. "I learned that lesson later." She did not give him forgiveness. She gave him a time. Dom. Outside, the Crownfire opened 2 corridors across the storm-dark sea white for civilian rescue, crimson for royal flight. Neither crossed the other. Marwen walked toward the harbour by the route she had chosen for herself. At dawn, Vaedric would meet her there without a throne between them.